Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bomb Squad. Check out this mustache I got going on.
Hell yeah.
We are here. We're finished. We're wrapping up our gangster month of bad cops, and we've ended it with quite a doozy. We're talking today about, and also, yeah, go check out our other ones. We did deep. What should we do? We did King of New York. We did Deep Cover. We did In Too Deep.
Yeah.
And now we're finishing it with 1999's The Year of the Movie. The Corruptor, directed by James Foley, who directed two of the 50 Shades trilogy. It was written by Robert Pushy. It stars my baby Chow Yun-Fat. It stars Mark Wahlberg. It stars Rick Young. It's a lot of character actors that you probably would know, like Paul Ben Victor, who you don't know, but if you saw his
Yeah,
face,
I was like that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Cox, I think.
Brian
was in it.
Cox.
Brian Cox is the dad.
Logan Roy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Logan Roy, yeah.
So normally when we get to this point where we talk about the movie, I sometimes get a little annoyed when my co-hosts give away too much of the plot. But I think the problem with this description is going to be there's too much plot to summarize it in anything other than 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's indecipherable.
So, William, why don't you summarize this movie?
You love this movie so much. Tell us all about it.
This is his first viewing.
Let's see. It's about... So Chow Yun-Fat is like this guy who's kind of like keeping the peace in Chinatown. And Mark Wahlberg plays not like a rookie cop, but just like another cop who gets assigned to his unit. And so Chow Yun-Fat is like... He's a good guy, but he also has to do some bad stuff. And so he's like trying to keep his life secret from Mark Wahlberg, who's just trying to be a good cop. Then you find out some more stuff later on. And as in all gangster movies, shit hits the fan eventually.
Very true. It is kind of funny. Like, again, I didn't really plan this. I was just kind of thinking about these movies and talking about them. But all of them kind of involve undercover cops, except for King of New York.
Yeah.
And also all of them involve those undercover cops not even looking at the law book once they become cops.
Right.
Just breaking every law
Yeah.
they possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie is interesting. It's kind of like, it feels... It's crazy watching this because, just that they made these type of movies. Like, a movie completely set in Chinatown, New York, is like it doesn't seem that crazy at the time, but now it's like they don't even make action movies unless like there's three superheroes attached, and
Right,
so
right.
it's a very interesting film. But I know that you guys saw this for the first time, so I want to hear your thoughts on what did you think of the Corruptor?
I mean, I thought it was pretty good. I'd seen it one other time before,
Oh, okay.
like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I mean, it's pretty good. It's like it has that sort of mid '90s or like late '90s like extreme action vibes, kind of like King of New York, even though that's sort of an earlier movie.
Right.
Um, I think it's funny because whenever I first heard about Chow Yun-Fat, it was during Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So I always think of him as like this kind of like real classy guy. And so to see him in all of like his like older movies where he's like an action
Like
hero who
dirty
just like
Hong Kong
runs around
stuff.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fucking murdering people, it's like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's always like so funny to me. But yeah, I like this movie. It's good. It's like
It.
it's hard to follow a little bit, but Chow
Yeah.
Yun-Fat's just always so good, and Mark
It.
Wahlberg has like such a
Yeah.
boyish
I
kind of
know.
thing to him.
I will say that Chow Yun-Fat is the clear standout of this film, and it's also
Mhm.
funny. Like again, something that I don't know if it would ever happen, but you would be surprised. You'd think it happened more, but Chow Yun-Fat, like the action stars that come over from Asia usually are the martial artists, and
Mhm.
Chow Yun-Fat is not a martial artist.
Yeah.
He's just like an action star. His big movies are gun plays, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting that they decided to bring Chow Yun-Fat over here and try him out on some, and like these are pretty big movies for the time. This one, Replacement Killers,
Yeah.
and to just kind of give them these huge leads is pretty impressive. Again, it's just that kind of thing where like how diverse these movies are, where like half of this movie is just kind of showing how Chinatown works, like in the criminal underbelly of it, and it's such an interesting dynamic and setting.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot to be desired. I think Williams kind of touching on a little bit that it's very hard to there's like so much going on,
Yeah.
but
It's
the
very
actual
like
like
who's lying
crux,
because everyone's lying to each
yeah.
other, and they're
Right.
Mm.
Right.
sometimes they're saying something, but it's backhanded. Like especially the
Yeah.
who's the guy?
Rick Young,
Um,
Henry Lee.
yeah, who's like kind of the
The
businessman who's
guy.
dealing
Yeah.
like double dealing
Yeah.
every single person. So it's like every conversation
Yeah.
was like two ways.
Yeah.
He's like triple dealing. There's like multiple scenes in this movie where two characters are talking and they mean completely different things, and they mean completely different things from what they're saying
Yeah.
and also from what they're saying, like
Yeah,
what they actually
yeah.
mean to each other.
Right.
Their
And it's like it's too
intentions, and
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. But I don't know. It's almost like it's cool and it's really stylish, and it's almost
Hmm.
not. It almost needs to lean into that more, and it really comes out in the action
Yeah.
scenes, which is really
Yeah.
good. I
That's
don't
when
know,
it shines
there's
for sure.
the very first.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
oh go ahead.
I just
I know that I'm so
Go
jealous.
ahead. And then.
no, but like yeah, like
Okay,
the
go
very
ahead.
first scene with Chow Yun Fat is like he's these like triads are like shooting at places and killing. Like a mob war. It's like the two different groups of
Yeah.
like triads are fighting, and he's just like at this shop with this old man. He's like, "You got to get out of here," because they're coming to like rough him up.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to do it. He's just like messing with them. And then he like jokingly does the finger gun to the head and pulls
Yeah.
the fake trigger. And the guy pulls the gun and he immediately just pulls his real gun and just shoots him in the head in the same
Yeah.
way.
I
And
know.
it's like, more of this, please.
Fucking A. Yeah.
See, and
Just
here and we'll get back to this at the end, but I will say that's a very cool thing, and I think one of the coolest things, and it's so funny because you saw with Jet Li. Jet Li was kind of introduced around the same time, but Jet Li was introduced through Lethal Weapon, and in Lethal Weapon, it almost goes against the role that like Jet Li never played a bad guy. He never played a stoic guy. He never played or like he played stoic, but like in a kind of like hero-y way, not in a creepy way. And Lethal Weapon just kind of makes him generic bad guy. Like he doesn't talk, he doesn't like interact, he just fights guys. And like you see that that's kind of how they introduce a lot of foreign stars, whether it's Asian or Mexican or Spaniard. Like when they introduce them, they're always like the bad guy. And as
Yeah.
a matter of fact, in Replacement Killers, that's Danny Trejo's like big role for like an American audience, and he plays just like a nameless bad
Yeah.
guy. And so I think it's interesting how much personality Chow Yun Fat was able to bring in in Replacement Killers, it's not as prevalent, but in this one especially, like he's so lively. He's so like that scene that Josh just talked about is such a good like because he's playing cards and he's pretending like to be drunk and like kind of belligerent, and so
Yeah.
they kind of like dismiss him. And then he like does the gun thing, and then he shoots them, and he kills like 8 guys, and like
Yeah.
he just tells the shop owner like, "Hey, we'll see you later." You know, it's like
Yeah.
there's every like inch of him is just oozing personality. And I think
Right.
that's why he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, you have Mark Wahlberg coming in. I will say Mark Wahlberg's maybe lack of acting almost helps the twist later on. Because he's just kind of the starry-eyed, like, oh, I'm a
This
cop.
is
I
a
want to
new
do what's right.
place.
Which
Yeah.
there is a good line because it's like the all Asian police bureau, and he's
Mhm.
and then Chow Yun-Fat's like, he's worse than white. He's green.
Yeah. And then it's even better because someone in the back laughs at that joke. It's like, what is this included?
And
Yeah.
they just, I
Yeah.
do like that they immediately are like, oh, you're terrible. Like, we hate you. We wish you weren't here. You're
Yeah.
here. You're just trying to sleep with us like our women.
Also, I do want to say before we get too far into this, the opening credits are the same type of credits as the original Terminator, and I think this is like the only second time I've ever seen
Oh,
this
the like
done. Where
fonts
the
overlapping
words, yeah.
each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
For
It's so
for,
I was
cool.
like Terminator credits.
for the
Let's go.
Corruptor, which is weird
Yeah.
because it's not like that kind of movie at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, so this movie stars a character named Uncle Benny, and Uncle Benny is like he's played by Kim Chan, and for some reason he plays the character Uncle Benny in like a bunch of movies. Like he plays them in Lethal Weapon, he plays them in this, and like not like oh he plays another character. He literally plays a character named Uncle Benny in both movies, and I was always like, why did you do that? Like, what was the
Yeah.
point? Because his name again is Kim Chan. Like his name is not Benny or anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I understand. Like if you name them both Benny, but why did you name them both Uncle Benny?
Yeah.
Which I always think is weird. But yeah.
Must be in his
So yeah,
contract.
Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, I wonder if I want to be Uncle Benny.
Uncle
instead.
Benny or nothing.
Yeah. I like so Mark Wahlberg is kind of like he's not a rookie, but it's like this is his first like I'm in plain clothes
Real
now, and
gig,
he's joining
yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
And then and so like no one trusts him, and like and another thing I think is real good is that Chow Yun-Fat, and again like just compared to a lot of the other stars that come not just from Asia but from any country where they're not English isn't their first language. His English is really really good. Like Chow Yun-Fat like had lived in Hong Kong his whole life.
Yeah.
And so in this movie there's never a point where you're like, "Oh, this guy just barely learned English like 6 months ago." Like
Yeah.
he sounds like like any American. And I thought
Yeah.
like his language is I don't know what that they did, but his accent is great.
Yeah.
Right.
He's such a star. It's like
I know he
doesn't
has
really
such a
even-
presence.
yeah, just like
I
the way he
know.
like looks, like the way his face looks is like he's like sad, but he's also like accepted his sadness and is just like
Yeah.
gonna do what he has to do. And I feel like that's how he always is. Like he's just like
Mhm.
he's not like a huge guy or like loud or I mean he can get loud I guess, but like
Yeah.
you just can't take your eyes off of him. Like kind of like
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just really
He's
good.
kind of like-
he's just a fucking star. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
He's like he's not the action star that you want, but he's the action star who stayed.
Yeah. He's the one we deserve.
Cuz yeah, it's kind
I
of
don't know what
like
that means.
he's not big like Stallone, and he's not like again he doesn't know like any fighting styles. But his whole thing is like, oh, he's not gonna leave until the crime is done. Like he's
Yeah.
gonna solve the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it makes him. He kind of like he reminds me a lot of like Bruce Willis when Bruce Willis came out in Die Hard and stuff. He kind of has that kind of
Yeah.
smooth attitude where it's like it's not like cocky, but it's almost like oh, can't believe this is my job.
Yeah,
That kinda
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, he just seems very wise. He seems like he knows something
Uh-huh.
that no one else knows.
Yeah. And so the first thing they do is they take him on a raid. And the raid, again, that's like kind of the setup. And that's why I remember, because I remember like Mark Wahlberg, or he tells something to Mark Wahlberg. And I was like, damn, his English is so amazing in this. Which again, not in a racist way.
It's almost racist if you keep bringing it up.
I know. But then they break in and there's like a bunch of people. It's like a whorehouse, and
Yeah.
so they like start arresting people, and then they start like, and then like there's like a secret wall that breaks down, and there's just like guys waiting behind it, like in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. They're just like shooting at them, and they're like, yeah, and they start killing the cops, and then everyone starts fighting.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's like one of my favorite scenes in our theme of this is how real cops are. Like there's a part where they're like trapped in this hallway and Chow Yun-Fat figures out like, oh, I gotta get to like I'm gonna break through the different like little rooms to get to like the bad guy who's standing in this hallway, and he like shoots them, and then he tells like the other cops who are still like undercover, he's like, in 3 seconds everyone shoots at once because there's like one more guy, and then so they're like, he's like 3, 2, 1, and there's like this cool scene where you see like every single cop come out of hiding and start shooting, and then the dude doesn't get hit one time.
Yeah.
He just kind of runs away.
Yeah,
And Chow Yun-Fat has to chase him.
that happens. that's life.
I was like, what a cool scene! Them all coming out and they're shooting. Then he's
Yeah.
just like,
And they're just like, nope. that is good, and that scene kind of leads way to because they arrest all these guys, right? The ones that didn't get shot, and
yeah,
the FBI shows up. That's Paul Ben Victor. 3 first
Right.
names. Crazy. He's like, yeah, one of those guys is an FBI informant. So you either like, we can't turn him loose. You either have to arrest all of them or arrest none of them, or like not charge
Right.
any of them.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, which one is it? He's like, the Chinese one. And he like leaves. He's just like,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not giving you anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Such dicks, yeah. and then this also introduces that as well as being corrupt and also like doing whatever it takes. Chow Yun-Fat also has a hooker girlfriend. He really is the most classic archetype.
Yeah.
That he protects and saves money and gives money to and lets him leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, this corrupt cop with a heart of gold. And I like too because after that scene, it becomes for like his whole division, like Chow Yun-Fat's. It's not about like, oh, we need to solve a crime. He's like, no, we need to like swoop in and steal this from the FBI, like out of spite. He's like, I just don't want them to get any credit because they're dicks,
It's so at this point we find out that he's also working with the businessman, kind of like they kind of help each other out. And it's also like he's not really, he wants to find out who the FBI agent is, but it's like they want him to do that because of course he's an FBI agent ratting on them. But it almost seems like Chow Yun-Fat just wants to do it just because he was embarrassed that he didn't know about it. So he just kind of really wants to like get to the bottom of it,
Yeah.
It's yeah.
It's a cool thing.
And then
Brian Cox shows up around this point because I was like, damn, Brian Cox. He's not really he's like Mark Wahlberg's degenerate gambler father. It's just like, I just need 5 large to get through the week.
Yeah, I want you to be my partner. You don't got to pay my entire debt, just a little bit.
Yeah. It's such a weird role because he's such a like revered actor now. You're like, oh yeah, he just played little character parts for most of his life.
Yeah.
Oh man! Also, William, what do you think of this? Originally, Mark Wahlberg's character was going to be played by Ethan Hawke.
Oh man,
he had to leave to accommodate Chow Yun-Fat's schedule.
That would have been tight. But
That's
he also
crazy,
got to do it.
It would have been
later
just
on.
Training Day, which this is already kind of Training Day.
I know. This is like in my head canon. This is like a prequel to The Departed, like where Mark.
It does
like
feel
it's kind of like his.
Oh, like he's jaded now. Oh,
yeah,
I can totally see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think it would have been funny for Ethan Hawke to do these two. And it is kind of like, it did feel very Departed because one of the things I really like about this movie, so while this is happening, the business guy is also kind of talking to Mark Wahlberg. And Mark Wahlberg just kind of being nice to him. Like he kind of knows he's a criminal, but like it's kind of unclear. So he's doing that thing where he's being polite. And this guy keeps giving him tips or helping him out at his job.
Yeah.
And like, I really like that sequence of events because it kind of shows how easily it can go from like you're just being polite to you're getting taken advantage of,
right?
Without anything really changing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
he almost gets in too deep.
Yeah,
without realizing it.
He's in deep cover.
Right. Not the King of New York.
Yeah, definitely not that.
Another thing is that prove that this movie is authentic, they play at one point DMX, who was very popular in the Blasian communities,
Was
because
he?
DMX loved Asian
Oh,
culture.
is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah, it is.
Hmm.
Would it be a weird thing to
Like
make
he
up?
was. It was. I know.
It was just it was a filler phrase, man.
um,
Yeah, I mean, when he passed, it was like a huge like memorial for him in New York in Chinatown.
Huh.
Um,
We share the
but
same
yeah, so that's
birthday.
interesting. Oh,
We used
really?
to, yeah. December 18th.
You kind of still do.
yeah, just like
Yeah.
I'll lose it.
This has been the DMX podcast,
Mm-hmm.
guys.
That was
We'll give
I,
DMX back.
you know what's funny too about this movie, because and a lot of times they do a good job of showing, and this is still true today, like they find like a dead refugee in a dumpster, and they're like, all right, I mean, and Mark Wahlberg's like, aren't we gonna like investigate? He's like, no, nobody cares, she's literally some like nameless refugee who had no money,
Yeah.
no family,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And then Mark Wahlberg's like, someone has to care about this. And then after this, they like get a lead, and they're like chasing these criminals in this car chase. And the criminal, this is broad daylight, just light up a traffic stop with an Uzi and kill like
Yeah.
8 people just waiting in traffic,
Yeah.
like a cab driver.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, the city's coming down on you. Like everyone's mad now that like white people have died in this
Yeah.
gang war.
On a
like,
bicycle.
like they're actually paying attention now. I thought that was a good touch. That was a sick sequence too. It was just
That
like,
was.
oh damn.
Yeah.
Also, we talked about Brian Cox, but we should point out that he's like an old cop,
Mm-hmm.
and so he gives Mark Wahlberg like advice, and you quickly realize that he's also a bad cop, and he's giving Mark Wahlberg the worst advice
Yeah.
he's ever heard.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, they don't have to know how much drugs was taken." It's like this isn't good. Like
Right.
this isn't a good relationship.
Let me give. Well, that's like okay, because we should almost just like kind of get to where this is actually genuinely this twist surprised me, because they're spending all this time trying to figure out who the like FBI like informant is in like the like triad or whatever, but then they're
Yeah.
like, oh no, there's also a police informant on your team,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like looking into you guys because
Right.
you're so clearly corrupt. You know, Chow Yun-Fat's like whole division, and it turns out to be it's Mark Wahlberg,
Yeah.
I know.
the one white guy, but he's so much of adults. I didn't even think it could be him because of how
Yeah.
like kind of dumb he comes off, which I think is
Right.
like works well with Mark Wahlberg's like kind of whole thing there.
Yeah.
It's because you didn't realize what the director was doing. Because every time Mark Wahlberg is smart, he's wearing glasses in that scene.
Is that
how you
true?
know. No, I don't know if it's 100% true, but I noticed that every time he did something smart,
Yeah.
every time they cut to him, he had the glasses
This is
on.
the dumb guy, smart guy. That's great.
That's so good. I love that so much.
But yeah, so okay, so then they find out that he's the informant, and then like he's he's teaching them how to like do things.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite scene in the whole movie is there's like a montage showing them becoming the best of friends, and it's
Oh
playing
yeah.
a Brian McKnight song,
Yeah.
but in Mandarin, and it's like I'm afraid. It's like nobody knows it but you, which it's like these are two straight men. Like, why are you playing?
Yeah.
And like it's in slow motion, and they're like hugging
Yeah.
each other. It keeps showing them smiling at each other.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
It's almost like it's like that RRR, how they become friends, and it's like, okay, this is either a different culture or a very homoerotic subtext.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But it still works. You do believe that they're good friends. I just
Yeah.
like that. It's not just the the betrayal of like, oh, what's Mark Wahlberg gonna do, like internal affairs. But when his dad finds out, because he finds out he's like disgusted. He's like,
Yeah.
you're a
Yeah.
good cop, not
Yeah.
a bad cop
Fuck
like
you,
me.
Mark.
Which. So yes, okay. So then like he finds out. Chow Yun-Fat finds out that he's the corruptor. Well, he's the corruptor,
Mm-hmm.
but he finds out that Mark Wahlberg works for the bad guys, the law-abiding citizens,
Yeah.
and so he's like gonna hold them hostage, or he's gonna like he's gonna like kill him, but then he decides not to, and then they get called out on the case, and they go out there, and then Chow Yun-Fat does not make it out. He saves
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg, and then like at the very end, because the dad's like, "Oh, are you really gonna turn him in?" And Mark Wahlberg's like, "I'm gonna do my job. He broke the law." And then at the end, the FBI's like, "Hey," or no, and then like there's a scene where Chow Yun-Fat has his gun on him, and he's like, "I know you work for the DA," and he's like, "No, I think you're a great cop. I will tell everyone you're a great cop, and I
Yeah.
love like you're so amazing." And then he gets killed, and then he decides not to rat on him. He's like, "He's dead. Who cares?" Which is true, but it's also like, wait, is the point of this movie that cops should be corrupt?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, I get. Well, it's like because they almost do like it's like a debt because early in the movie, Chan Fat saves his life. He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm in your debt," and then at the end, it's like, okay, he saved him again. So it's like, okay, he's in his debt, not to like. It is almost like the idea that he's throwing away his entire like police career just so like Che and Fat could have like a nice police funeral is kind of absurd, but
Yeah. This guy he just met, but like owes his whole life to, which they do
yeah,
kind of bring up. They're like, when you save someone, they owe you their life, and he's like, "You saved my life, so you know what that means." So maybe he was just like really taking it strangely literally. But his life is his career. He's a career man.
But
He's married to the force.
but what do you think of that scene earlier when he tells him like, "Oh, I think you're a great cop. I'll tell anyone." And so I told the DA. Why did he say that?
I don't know. I guess he believed in him. Maybe.
I almost
I don't
think he
know.
was like trying to be like, hey, no matter what you've done, you're
Because
still a good guy. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of
I think that's kind of like maybe they needed like to show the triad and the other gangs like how extreme they were
Hmm.
because it's kind of like the most extreme stuff we see, like Josh was saying, like the scene where they just kind of disregard the death of a hooker or like of a refugee. It's kind of like no, the worst stuff I see in this movie is perpetrated by the police.
right.
Like
Yeah.
the gangs are just kind of making money and killing, and
That
shooting at
is
each
weird. Like,
other.
there's not even like really. There is like the one kind of triad guy that it follows a little bit, but it's always just little snippets. It's never.
Yeah,
They're not really characters. Like
that guy is super annoying.
Yeah.
and you would almost want like someone actually in deep cover with the triad, and then you almost see both sides of that. So it's almost that's definitely where it doesn't totally click, I think.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's just the weird like because then it's like, oh yeah, Mark Wahlberg took down the real criminals, and it's like, well, they're all kind of criminals.
Right.
What they're
Right.
doing. Um,
It is so funny to
it's
go back
just
and just watch like every cop movie now. Like it's just like such a different lens
yeah,
that it's like it's always in the back of my mind now. Just like that the corruption is real and that they're
oh,
all
like
fucked
how
up.
like
right,
all of New York, the NYPD is like a big gang, basically, like that type
Yeah,
of
like
thing. Yeah.
when you're a kid, you don't
yeah,
really. Well, I mean, as a white kid, I didn't really understand that, and I was always just kind of like, "This
yeah.
is just fantasy. Like people are just getting shot. I love it." But now it's like it's kind of like fucked up now. It's like hard to not like hard to
Well,
watch, but it's just like hard to not think about
It
that.
is, yeah. You do think
it's
about
hard.
it more, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard to like in this movie, like of course in like when you see a movie like Die Hard, it's easy to disconnect because John McClane's like a superhero.
Right.
But like with this one, where it's realistic enough, when they're not kind of addressing the fact that they're breaking the law,
Yeah.
it does. Now you're kind of seeing it, and you're like,
Uh,
you know, like where I don't think anyone thought that at the time. I don't even think like I remember when I saw this the first time, I was not thinking like, oh, this guy is real bad. I was like, I can't believe they killed Chow Yun-Fat.
yeah. Yeah.
I was very young.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like you don't really
But
understand things
and then
yet. Anyways, what were
yeah,
you
and
gonna say?
I also think that after and like to get too political on here, after 9/11, I feel like that 9/11 kind of is the point where everyone, like regardless of where you lived or what your upbringing was, kind of realized how corrupt the government would could be. Like when
Yeah.
we're watching them like start a war with Iraq and do all this kind of thing, like that's when we were like started to really pay attention to like, okay, but you if you can abuse power, how far can you go in the name of good
Right.
before it doesn't matter how like good you think you are, you
Well,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
that and like it's like even obvious abuses of power like aren't punished at all, you know. So it's like
Yeah.
okay, so cops could kind of just do this as much as they want and get away with it, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
why wouldn't like a lot of them, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's even like because it's I mean we did the Cobra, but Cobra's like such a silly movie that it's like it's almost it makes it funny that the point of that movie is I think that cops should just have free reign on criminals.
Yeah.
But this one, because it's so kind of like smart everywhere else, by the end of it, you're like, okay, but what am I taking away from this? That we
Yeah.
don't give cops
Right.
enough free reign, Especially NYPD cops. It's like if I like they're playing Candy Crush and
Well,
fucking
and he
subway.
also like because you get the sense that even like the way they present it is that even like a good cop doing like staying as close to the law as possible is going to be in kind of a weird gray area dealing with like kind of the Chinatown like underworld.
Right.
Like it's just
Mhm.
like it's just a reality. It's not like Training Day where he's literally trying to get Ethan Hawke killed. Like in this one, he's like still he doesn't do anything that
Right,
egregious
right.
the same
Yeah.
way that like Denzel is like clearly like a horrible guy. you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just obviously a
Yeah.
criminal for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah. And I think
it's a tonal thing. I don't know. It's
Mhm.
weird.
also I will be remiss if I don't mention my favorite scene in the entire film. It's the only scene that I really like quote constantly. So the triads are fighting, and then you realize that the kind of politician guy is actually working with one of the gangs to take out his own gang, like to kill Uncle Benny, so that they can like so that he can take over because Uncle Benny doesn't want a war. Um, and then so they go in and they're about to kill Uncle Benny, and Uncle Benny's like, "You can't kill me. No one can kill Uncle Benny," and then he shoots himself in the head. And then the triad guys are like, "What the what happened?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the one like leader goes, "We don't care, Uncle Benny. We'll kill you anyway." And
No.
then they shoot him.
Yeah, shoot his body. See, that's such a
Blew his
good
fucking head
scene,
off.
but it's almost like, I almost want more time with these guys because, like,
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
is such a
I wish they were more the
crazy,
bad.
you
Yeah.
know.
I agree.
But like there was a long time where I was like, "We kill you anyway, Uncle Benny." I would just say that a lot.
It's fucking
It's such a
funny.
funny thing that they do.
And
Yeah,
it's like such a weird room. Like it feels like they like forgot to
Yeah.
shoot that scene, so they just like found a random room and they're like, "We'll just do it here." Like it's like brightly lit and
Yeah,
like just all white walls. Like it just feels not like the rest of the
they were
movie, which
doing
is
it
like
Borderlands
super
yeah. And
style
stylish.
with someone's
his
house that
his
day.
Yeah.
his hair isn't like there's no gel in his hair, which I've never seen this actor like with that. So it's kind of all wild.
Yeah.
It does feel like it's so out of place for the rest of this movie.
Yeah.
I think that's why it sticks out so much, but it makes me laugh every
I agree. It was good.
time.
It's good stuff. It did give you pause though, right? You're like, oh, that it's the white guy is Mark Wahlberg. You're like, oh, that is weird.
Oh, because of his Asian.
His
No,
hate
I didn't
crime
think of
Oh
that.
yeah.
past. It's one of those
I
things where you're
see.
like, oh, I wonder if that, yeah.
And I wonder what the reaction would have been like. Simone Liao or whoever plays Shang-Chi got a lot of backlash for working with Mark Wahlberg. But I also
Hmm.
That
think,
was
like, to
like people didn't
me,
know for a long time though, right? So
yeah, I know that I don't think about it because it happened before he was famous, which is kind of on my fault. But
Yeah.
because of that, like, it wasn't a story where it was like Mark Wahlberg did this. It was like, oh, in the past, Mark Wahlberg had done this, which, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make it better, but it
Right.
makes it harder to remember.
It's I think people only like really think about it now, probably just because everyone's so online that
Yeah.
Like the other day, that great football player O.J. Simpson passed, and I found out some not cool stuff about him. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that
he had a
much.
violent past.
Naked Gun 2.5. That's what you're talking about.
He did
You're
some
like, this is the
not too
weak
good
link
stuff.
in the trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Naked glove.
um,
But yeah, and I think like it's kind of funny because after this, like Replacement Killers was a huge hit, and then this one was not a hit. It didn't do like it. I think it broke even, which is not good for studios.
Yeah. It was like
And so the
24.
next time, yeah, I think, and the next time we see him is in an American movie is in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
I was
and
gonna
he's
say
just so
that's
wasted in that film.
yeah. He's like that was one of those things I had never seen all the sequels until a couple years ago, like during the pandemic, and I was like, oh yeah, he's like in this, and this actor's in this. So I was like, they're all in this for like 10 minutes. It's
Yeah,
literally
Right.
like a nothing role. He looks really cool in it, for the 10 minutes he's
Yeah.
there. So,
It's like
Yeah.
that whole
He
series
looks
for
cool.
sure.
Yeah.
what a waste.
But-
Yeah.
And yeah, he hasn't really. I haven't seen him in anything too much. He's kind of gone back to Asia and stuck to those movies, but you'd think that they'd kind of cross over still. But again, Hard Boiled and The Killer are impossible to find. So
Yeah, I know.
who knows?
It's a
I
shame.
think like if someone's asked me should I watch this movie? I would say you should, but it shouldn't be your first Chow Yun-Fat movie. I think leave that to the killer or replacement killers.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I
Yeah,
think it's like a fun romp,
it's a nice
but
treat.
yeah, I was like, I was watching it, and then like I was like, I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, and so I read like a Wikipedia plot synopsis so I could like have some info for this podcast, and I was like reading it, and I was like, this is garbage. This doesn't mean anything
Yeah.
at all.
It was, there was a couple of times where I was like, wait, who did? Wait, you're on that
Yeah,
team?
who are
Yeah,
they shooting at? No, it's fine. I don't know.
There's
It's
that cop at the beginning who goes, yo. He shows up at the end, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he shows up. He was still there. He was
what's
like
up,
around."
bro?
now. Would you if someone's like I've never seen a Mark Wahlberg movie, would you recommend this as their first one?
Sure.
Departed, baby.
Oh, no,
Departed.
it would be a fine showcasing of his abilities.
You'd be like,
Yeah, because when they watch The Departed, they'd be like, "Oh, he's got something."
Yeah,
that is weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Corruptor.
It's I almost I struggle with it because I'm like I don't know if Mark Wahlberg's a good actor or just good directors know how to use him right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I know. I
But
think probably the latter. Maybe a mixture of both,
yeah,
but definitely more what the
but I
second
also think,
choice.
and William, as a filmmaker, tell me if you agree with this. But I almost feel like actors like that's every actor because you see like Quentin Tarantino or Christopher Nolan, and they'll bring people like Luke Perry or Tom Berenger,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, this is the best role they've ever done. And it's like,
Right.
was that because they just really knew that they could kill this role? Or is that because Christopher Nolan is so good at working with actors that it doesn't matter who he's working with, it's gonna come out good, you know?
I mean, I think that if it's like a good enough director, it's like I think it comes down to vision for sure. Like, and I think that some people are just really good at picking out who has the best vibe. And then I think what that kind of translates into, and this is all just guessing, is just like that director just fucking pumps them up and just like,
Right.
I don't know, makes them perform really well. Because like this one, it kind of seemed like Chow Yun-Fat's bringing his own flavor, and everybody else is just kind of like in a movie. But then like in The
Right.
Departed,
Right.
Scorsese's like, dude, you have a crazy voice and you got a lot of energy, so let's just make you swear a lot, and
let's make you
it
the
worked
aggressive
fucking
guy.
so well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it probably comes down to director and actor
Well,
relationship for sure.
and it's one of the things that I've obsessed over a little bit because you think of someone like Valerie who's just naturally talented, you know, and so it's like, did I help her get that performance, or did she just figure it out and ignored me? But then you look at someone like Pablo, who did not like. You have to direct Pablo; he's not bringing it on his
yeah,
own.
Yeah.
yeah.
But he did a good job where like some people, like there's a lot of people have told me like, oh, I loved Pablo's character, and it's like they like him, and it's truly because of the acting, and it's like, but was that because I think there is a natural chemistry to Pablo, which is why he's so popular. But I also
Yeah.
think you have to hone it, and I think like the Empty Space is probably where we honed it the best. But I think also like, but maybe they just knew how to do that, and they just
But
cared
but
about
like
it.
yeah, I could
Yeah.
I mean I see what you're saying because obviously it's like it's always going to be a good director. But I've also seen like I mean kind of a cliche answer, but
Yeah,
you've certainly seen like Nicolas Cage movies where he's clearly
yeah,
trying harder than the director, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, he's
Totally.
kind of carrying this with his energy that is not in
yeah.
any other scene in the movie, you know. So there
Yeah.
is some of that too, where the actor's just that
For
big.
sure.
Well, Josh, you made me write a scene in Borderlands about your
I
life,
definitely
and
did not ask you to write that
so did
scene.
you? Did
I didn't even
you?
want to be
Was
in that
that? Did
scene.
you live that scene, or did I like bring that out of you? Is the question, because that was
that was
your
all director. That was no actor in this
Yeah.
the
case.
the like 45 people who watch our show but have never seen my movies are going to be very confused right now. And you know what? It's your fault. Go watch
It's
it
on
and then
Tubi,
come back. Go watch
Borderlands.
Borderland, and you'll understand that joke.
Yeah, you can double feature with the Corruptor, also on Tubi.
Oh yeah, it's also about
Or it's
Yeah,
also discounted on Amazon Prime.
no.
perfect.
$3.19 as opposed
Just
to three
it's
ninety
free
nine.
on Tubi, so just watch it on Tubi.
Yeah.
Just watch it
Always
with the
support
4
Tubi.
ads that randomly
No,
come in the middle of a
actually,
sentence.
rent it, guys. In this double feature, you can also rent the Empty Space on Amazon. So
Hmm.
rent them both because Andrew gets more from the rentals. Also, every time it asks on YouTube, they're like, "Oh, is this an ad?" And I'm like, "No, but it's not really."
Yeah.
Go watch those movies.
I I also feel, you know, you said like they would make a movie just set in Chinatown today. I also think just because they'd be so worried about like, is this like racist?
Yeah,
yeah,
That yeah,
see,
it's kind of a hard thing with
I
all '90s
think
movies. It's like everything's a
yeah,
little
they're all
racist.
like
It's
yeah,
all kind of fucked up.
like I watched Black
yeah,
Rain a while back. I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely racist. They would
Oh
not make
yeah,
it
yeah.
today. I
yeah,
liked it,
Uh,
but
True Lies is the most underrated of all James Cameron films, and it's gonna really take a lot before we cover True Lies because
yeah,
that movie did not age at all.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but no,
well,
but it is very fun. It's
yeah. I
just
remember being.
every scene you're like,
What's racist in True Lies? I don't remember.
the
oh well,
terrorists.
the
The
terrorists
terrorist.
are all like the most. It's like the most Middle Eastern.
It's like Team
It's
Oh,
America, basically level like
gotcha,
yeah,
of Arabic
gotcha.
terrorists. Yeah.
and there's like literally a scene where they like have the thing and you just see his eyes widen, like but his whole head is covered in the scarf, and
Oh,
like also just the whole fact of
damn.
Arnold has been lying to his wife for her entire life and been gaslighting her. It's just
Yeah, damn, for
it's a
real.
lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
And then there's like that scene where he's drugged. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that movie.
shit.
But yes, but I think that, but that's kind of the weird thing about this. It kind of shows how things evolve because even Cameron said like they've asked him before, would you ever make a sequel to True Lies? And he's like, no, 9/11. After 9/11, terrorists weren't funny anymore. They were real.
Right.
Before people didn't take them that seriously.
Hmm.
And so it's like even he kind of understands what the problem was with it. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just, time changes and you
I
realize
think it's come
something you
back
thought was
around though.
funny.
I think enough.
If you're
Also,
holding a little green
also,
ball.
well, and it's also funny because it's
It's an
that thing where it's
apple.
like
Oh,
because you're like, oh, would they'd be scared to be racist? But it's like, but in this day and age, you easily solve that. You just get an Asian director who wants to make a story about Chinatown crime.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so but it's funny, like
Then they just
that's not
wouldn't give
even
him
an
any
option
money.
anymore,
You
even
know.
though it
Hmm.
should be. Because like if there was, let's say there was this Asian director, he makes this super badass short, and Hollywood takes super notice. Like if it was in the '90s, they would have given him, they would have said, "Here's $20 million, go make your movie. Let's see what happens."
Yeah.
But now, instead of doing that, they go, "Oh, hey, here's $250 million. Make this cookie cutter, like just draw within the lines
Hmm.
of this superhero movie, and then go away." And it's like, man, I kind of wish that we went back to the fucking gambles,
The mid
Yeah.
budget action movie. Yeah. No, I
Hmm.
agree. I mean, it's a real
which,
wasteland.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one is the last
So
couple, and I mean, it's like,
that's why Tubi's a refuge. That's where you're going to find interesting stuff still, just lurking in
yeah,
the
Yeah.
internet.
I mean, that is true. Tubi has some good shit.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, all right, guys, that was our podcast on the Corruptor. Next week we're going back to horror because according to the views, you guys do not
You
care about
guys do
gangster
not
movies.
like bad cops at all. You,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to see
Yeah.
monsters killing people.
Get
Want
your
to
head
you
out of
want
your
to
ass.
you want to see some scary monsters? So we'll bring it to you next week. We haven't figured out what it
We're,
is.
we're going to do
But I'm sure
cops
it'll be
and
fun.
monsters, R.I.P.D.
Also,
We're not going to do that.
there's a deep dive coming, and it's about monsters, the true faces of evil.
Demons,
So that's the first. It's already been recorded, so now we're just editing. So we'll see it hopefully in May.
A zombie with no conscience. Yeah.
Zombie Man. We'll see you guys next time.